What up,
What's
guys?
up, everybody?
Where did you come from?
Welcome to Superhero Chat.
We're in the same room.
What?
What's going on
Oh,
here?
my. All right,
How
guys.
did that happen?
In case you haven't been around, I'm back in Wake Forest now with Lewis.
The WF?
That's right. The dynamic duo is back. Anyways,
I did the wrong thing.
if you're new here, thanks for watching. I'm Jonathan. This is Lewis, and today we're going to be talking about why people love Marvel Comics so much,
And especially why we love them.
That's right.
It's our channel, and
That's right.
that's what we do here. We talk
Now you
a
know
lot.
if you've been around that we're DC guys, but we love Marvel. We want to give some our shout outs to why Marvel's such a great company, why they've done all that. But first, news and notables. News and notables.
Are you got anything?
I keep wanting to say turtle power after that.
Yeah.
Turtle power. I'm just gonna start doing that now.
So it's been quite a minute since we did our videos.
Make sure you can hear us.
So let's see. Marvel and Sony had a spat, and Spider-Man's no longer allowed to be in Marvel movies. Sad tears.
So,
We were debating about who might shoulder the weight of an Avengers movie without Spider-Man. Still no consensus as to who that'll be. Let's see. Folks are up in arms about the Joker movie and whether old Joaquin Phoenix's movie will promote violence or help people understand folks with mental issues and why they might choose to turn to violence instead of seeking out help. Let's see what else has happened. There's a lot that's happened. Hey, Jonathan moved back to Wake Forest.
That's right.
That's news and notable.
Yeah. So we'll hope to do some more stuff more regularly. We've got some great plans coming up, as I talked in my last video. We actually just finished filming a video for you coming later this week.
Yeah.
So talking about Star Wars comics, Star Wars comics. So should be fun. Keep an eye out for that this week. But until then,
it may or may not have something to do with this, which would be included as a notable because I read some of this week and it's excellent.
So if you want to see the full notable, stay tuned later this week for that.
Yes. Because we don't have time, as long as it took with our technical difficulties, we don't have time to go into why it's awesome. But check out that other video if you're interested.
But if you're watching, tell us in the comments why you love Marvel Comics. We want to know. Have you read anything other than that notable?
Not really.
I've been busy.
Some old comic, but now I don't even remember what it was because it's face down in my stack, so I can't picture what the cover was. Probably Fantastic Four or something.
Yeah.
I've really been on a Fantastic Four kick since you got me.
Since I got you back in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been playing Zelda Breath of the Wild, and it has been amazing. I've also been playing. I played Pokemon Let's Go Eevee. And that's been awesome. And then I'm just looking forward to the new Pokemon generation coming out in November. I'll probably do a video talking about that.
Is that the Sword and
Shield?
Okay. Yeah.
And I've got a video planned where we'll talk about the history of Zelda. So that should be fun.
Check your local Dollar Tree. They sell the cards for the Sword and Shield game or stuff. Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. Also, Dollar Tree, we found a secret item that will be used in a later Yoda video. So that's coming down the pipeline. So far,
excellent masks and swords and capes and things for Halloween. So check out your local Dollar Tree. You might find an excellent accoutrement for your Halloween needs.
Yeah.
Could that possibly be an allusion to something in the future as well?
But
wait and see.
you're probably like, man, they're actually streaming early today, which
Yeah,
it
you know,
just
when we're in
worked
the
out
same
well.
town, you know, my wife gives me a little bit more privilege
Yeah.
than when he's 3 hours away.
So
There's a time
it
difference.
might be a few weeks before we nail down
The
the
exact time.
streaming time, but I think we should be good for Monday nights. So
Presumably, my work schedule varies, so
there
we'll
you
see.
go. So we'll take that as a given. Thanks for your patience. The last few weeks, I've had a lot of things. Well, yeah, I've had a lot of things I've had to get in order, and but now we're back. So
He's going to be doing drug testing tomorrow for something. Maybe
So,
a job
fun
interview.
my mom told me, "Well, I guess you're gonna have to stop all those drugs you're doing." I'm like, "Thanks, mom." She's funny. Anyways, so our main topic.
I can't stop drugs. I never could.
Unless you got something else.
Not at the moment. I had a list of things at home that I wrote down that I felt like were going to be big, important things.
Yeah.
But you guys have probably heard about them because if you watch our channel, you already kind of like comics in some way.
Yeah.
And the kind of things that I was thinking of are big news. So
I mean, with the whole Sony Marvel Spider-Man thing, I'm just like, it's business. Things happen. I'm surprised it lasted this long, honestly.
Yeah, honestly,
But at
I
least
am
he
too.
made it to Endgame,
That's true.
and we got a good Mysterio movie, so
He's happy.
I'm not complaining too much. And I imagine they'll figure something out before too long. But I blame Marvel more than I blame, or Disney more than I do Sony.
Sony's just trying to protect their own investment,
Yeah,
and it makes sense.
there's a little guy right now.
Yeah. It's funny to think of Sony as the little guy.
And it would be stupid for them to sell Spider-Man back.
For anything less than multiple $billion.
That's funny that you say that. I was talking to someone from our church, and they were talking about a James Bond-esque villain. I was like, anyway, so if there's anything we missed, newsworthy or notables, or what you've been reading, if you've been
There's a comment section below.
leave us a comment. We'd love to talk about what you've been reading. I had to say goodbye to my comic book store guy over in Hickory. Awesome guy.
Time Tunnel, right?
I think so, yeah. I'm terrible with names. He writes stuff down for me.
I had to search it when I was going up to the visit because I'm like, I kind of want to know where we're going for comics. And
So
I'm pretty sure that was the name of it.
pretty great store. Great guy. I used to talk to him all the time. And so shout out to Time Tunnel Comics over in Hickory. If you're ever in Hickory, he's got a good shop there.
I have a question for you. Where might you find yourself seeking out comics in the future now that you're no longer in Hickory, but you're in Wake Forest?
So there's this awesome place. And if you like playing for life, you can play for life comics.
At Brandon's shop,
That's
right here. And he's got a new commercial that you haven't seen.
I haven't seen
And you guys have to watch. So we will link to that in the description below.
To it.
Well, I've already seen it though.
So I haven't.
Okay, that's true. So he could do a reaction video.
Anyways.
Yeah.
Anyways.
That when we're done.
All right. I think that's all our news.
Yeah, that's all our news.
All right. So we wanted to get into a deep dive as to why Marvel Comics is awesome. It's
Can I go first?
sure.
I don't like Marvel comics. I'm a DC guy. Video done. What's up, Danzy?
Hey.
Just kidding. Just kidding. He said we're DC guys, so the thought is you can't like both. I like
it's
them
kinda
and some image.
It's kind of like I'm a Star Wars and Star Trek fan.
Yeah.
I mean, I know Star Wars is better,
He's wrong, but that's okay.
but I love Star Trek. I mean, it's really great. But anyways, so I think, and we've got a bunch of reasons that we'll go over after this one, but I think the main reason that people love Marvel Comics, and it's at least the one that I've heard the most, is that Marvel characters are more relatable in that they're flawed characters. So if you look at DC, and
We'll probably do a video on this
obviously
later.
both have like characters that are perfect, but with DC as kind of a general whole, you got like Superman, you got Batman, you got Flash, you got Wonder Woman. Like Superman's supposed to be the best man or best superhero, best person you could be. Batman is like the best a human can be. Flash is like the fastest you could ever be. Wonder Woman's like the best woman you could be, and like they all have like they're the heroes are the most powerful in their field. Flash is the fastest. Superman's the strongest. Batman is the smartest. At least in detective.
Most inventive.
Right, and is able to endure the
Or
most.
innovative, I should say.
And so you have these ideals in DC that are perfect. Well, Marvel took a different strategy where it had characters that are flawed. And what we mean by that is not that the characters were didn't make mistakes, because Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, they make mistakes all the time.
Sure.
It's part of being the character, but they usually do the right thing. And as far as a personal character, they're generally flawless.
Right.
But if you look at Marvel, their characters have like normal human problems. Like Tony Stark is usually the first example, is that he's an alcoholic and he's a selfish jerk.
Right.
And he's got an ego. And so not really the typical like type A hero. He's got to overcome obstacles to being the hero. Similarly, Spider-Man, we can all relate to Spider-Man. He's got all this teenage drama going on around him. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's making stuff up as he goes. And that kind of just, relates to people. Like, hey, like these are new situations for me. I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I'm like Spider-Man.
Right. Well, you mentioned Spider-Man and his flaw. Like in his first appearance, he's trying to get money or whatever, right? And the guy's not wanting to pay him. And then the bad guy, some thief burglar guy comes by, robs the guy, and he lets him go.
Yeah.
Right. But that comes back to bite him in the butt. To put it in a similar perspective, for DC to do something like that, Bruce Wayne would have had to have been chucking rocks at the guy who shot his parents. I mean, for it to be kind of a one-to-one scenario there. Whereas Spider-Man wasn't exactly inviting that on himself, but by not stopping the burglar who killed Uncle Ben, which if you haven't heard of that, I don't know why you're watching our channel. Because, yeah. I mean,
but thank you for watching our channel.
Yeah, we're glad you're here. Absolutely glad you're here. But so with they're more down to earth. They're grounded in their humanity, so to speak.
And the DC characters, the problems that most of the main characters face, we're never going to face. I think there's still, and we'll talk about this in another video, I think there's still things that we can apply to our lives from there.
Sure. And
relate to them in different ways. But I think the reason we gravitate toward Marvel over DC, not us, but people, the reason people gravitate toward the Marvel characters is because they are relatable, like one-on-one correlation. He's dealing with that problem. I deal with that exact same problem. I can see this hero and how he overcomes it in his life, and it helps encourage me and helps equip me to apply it in my everyday life. And so I think there's this human desire to relate to other people, and comic books helps.
Yeah.
And I think,
especially for introverts, right?
Right.
Like we're built like mentally to be in community, and yet there's something about us that says, you know what? I don't really want to be around people sometimes.
Right. I was gonna say, like, I think that's why the nerd has kind of been, and sometimes geek has been characterized as an introvert. It's because oftentimes introverts don't like seeking our relation with real people.
Right.
We like doing it with fictional characters, and we really enjoy that kind of thing. And so introverts that are nerdy really gravitate toward those characters.
Especially the ones that they can relate to.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so as a big guy, I'll just tell you, like, what is that? So if you guys have seen The Waterboy, it's Ron Howard's brother. I forget his first name, but he's in that movie, and he stands up and tries to make a speech toward the end of the movie where they're all getting hyped up for the game, and he's like, "I'm not a very attractive man." And I'm not very smart. Well, I look at myself in the mirror and I don't see like these ruggedly handsome good looks. And so for a character like the Thing, who looks like a monster and still somehow manages to carry on his day-to-day life, that's encouraging to me. I know that there are things that I can do to improve my overall look, so to speak. But particularly when I was an awkward teenager, it was just really comforting to know that you can look weird and still be thought of as normal.
Yeah.
Or have friends or people that want to hang out with you.
Yeah.
Even friends that joke around and make fun of you, like Johnny does, the Human Torch.
And so we were talking about this earlier today. And we kind of related it to the philosophers Plato and Aristotle. And I'm pretty sure if you look like in the famous painting of Plato and Aristotle, Plato is pointing up and Aristotle is like holding his hands out or stop or something like that. And so like the idea is for Plato, it's all about the forms. Like in his theories, there's these forms out there that form the basis of every single idea. So like a perfect cup, there's this philosophical form or metaphysical form out there somewhere of a cup. And so cups are representations of the metaphysical form. So the physical cup is a form of the metaphysical form. There's this perfect cup idea that's out there. And then Plato or Aristotle is more like the form itself is the cup. And so when you make it into the cup, it contains or becomes the form itself. And so it's about the physical. And so we kind of related that to DC and Marvel, where DC is the idea of the forms that are out there, the idea of the perfection, which is I think where Superman comes from.
Right.
Like the idea of a perfect man. We're going to argue more than that now, but that it's more about the ideals that are more unreachable that we strive for, whereas Marvel kind of has more their Aristotelian thought of having the form being contained in the physical fallible object.
Right.
And so you have the characters who represent or contain the forms, but you look at it through all the flaws and stuff like that.
Right.
And so with characters like Iron Man, you see that he's flawed. And so his struggle, his heroism comes out in the fact that he has to overcome his own faults to become the ideal.
Right.
And it becomes more about him becoming a hero rather than
and you see
him
that
already
really
being a
good
hero.
in the first Avengers movie, especially.
I mean, if you watch the MCU, it's really about Iron Man or a huge part of it's Iron Man becoming a hero and then passing that on to the next generation, which is done wonderfully.
And what's really cool is how Robert Downey Jr. As a human being seems to have progressed as well, from all these party days and this unreliable individual until he becomes Iron Man. I mean,
so I think you've got something there, and I think that's because in earlier days in America, we're very idealistic.
So he's responding to Dan Zier, who said that older heroes were clearly good and bad. You could see like this clear distinction. And I agree. Like,
I think that comes from like we used to have a lot more unified cultural values. And I think, and I don't want to get political or anything, but we have a culture war where our culture is trying to figure out who we are. And I think part of that has to do with a revolution against the values that we held as a country, as a culture, not country, but culture. And so, not that that's always a bad thing, because some,
right.
value,
Some of the common held views
right.
when these characters were created, you think of Captain America in the 40s, Black people still weren't
Right.
allowed to eat with white people. So in those regards, we've progressed in a
Right.
positive way.
And actually, comic books is one of the ways that push
Right.
the boundaries of some of those social ideals.
Like the X-Men. I described that in a speech I gave in a public speaking class. They were like the pill in the mashed potatoes, or if you want a kid to take their medicine and they refuse to take the medicine, put it in their mashed potatoes. And when they take a bite of the mashed potatoes, they get the pill and they swallow it down. Even though the X-Men were white characters, the way that Stan Lee had sort of written them was they are born a certain way physically that sets them apart from everybody else. Just like African American people were born with black skin, and therefore, the culture at large, as it were, said you're different and therefore not as valuable as a human as this white guy over here, which is horrible.
So I think as far as storytelling goes, when our culture began pushing against some of the shared values, which in some instances was good, some instances I think is bad.
Sure.
I'll let you figure out what you think about that, but I think that's where we started getting more flawed. But even Stan Lee was one of the ones who really pushed flawed characters.
Right.
So Iron Man wasn't perfect. He's different than he used to be when he was created, but he still had problems. He was a flawed character from the beginning.
Absolutely.
And so was Spider-Man, and so was Hulk, and so was maybe not Thor. I don't know.
Thor was flawed.
Okay.
I mean, he had to learn humility so that he could possess the hammer.
Okay.
So his dad turned him into a human with a limp and carried a walking stick.
So
I mean, you don't get much more in need of humility than that.
So, in the 40s, you had DC creating their characters, and
Marvel.
it's very idealistic.
Sure.
And I think that's, and we're not going to talk about it as much here today, but I think that's one of the reasons people are drawn to DC is because of the ideals that the common values that we hold. Obviously, they're kind of goofy to go back and read some of them.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like go and watch the Adam West Batman. It's kind of goofy, but
you still get the essence of the character,
right? But I think why we're drawn to Marvel characters is because of the flaws that are built into the characters, and so there's this part of us that wants to identify. And I think one of the best examples for me has been the Incredible Hulk.
Right.
So you have this guy who's based off of the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde story, where there's this evil within him that is yearning to come out, even in a greater sense than in Jekyll and Hyde, because he had to drink the formula to become Mr. Hyde. He was kind of addicted to it.
Right.
But it's better, I think, even in the Hulk, in that he has to control himself because there's this monster that's inside that if he's not self-controlled, it comes out. And so it just brings up a lot of moral questions, which I think is really great for the story, which is also why I hate it when stories don't include Bruce Banner.
Right.
It's my biggest problem with all the Marvel cartoons that have the Hulk.
Right, because you're
missing the point of the Hulk. The Hulk isn't just supposed to be this brute that just runs things over. The importance of the Hulk is the battle of evil that's within.
And it's funny because for 25, 30 years, and then even with Peter David's run where he had the Hulk in control of, Bruce Banner in control of the Hulk's body, it was for kids, right? Like, so it's foolish to look at these cartoons and say, well, this is acceptable, this is the Hulk, when in reality you're ignoring so much of what the Hulk is about in an effort to appeal to kids, because the Hulk cartoon I watched in the '90s had, the Hulk Bruce Banner battling, being the Hulk.
Yeah.
Like I think I remember an episode where he tried to go back in time and stop the Hulk from being created or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
and I think with that, now, just as a upfront, we're both Christians, and so that's where we're going to come from this. And so, but we're going to argue that all of us have this sin nature inside of us, this evil inside of us that we're constantly battling. We're trying to put off. And so, similarly with the Hulk, he's got this evil that's within, that's yearning to come out, and he has to use his self-control to battle it. And of course, he fails all the time.
And I mean, in one sense, it's something he's dealt with since he was a kid, right? Like, you read the comics and you realize he was abused by his father. He saw his mother killed, and he was powerless to do anything about that. And so he suppressed all his emotion and all his feeling in regards to those things and turned towards science. Because science he can control, science he can sort of mold into, to make it do what he wanted to do in one sense. But then, like, his thinking gets flipped, because then he becomes a creature of science in a situation that was outside of his control yet again.
Yeah. And I think one of the not cool things about him is Bruce Banner isn't the superhero. He does a lot of good with his scientific knowledge,
and he does his best to funnel.
Right. But the Hulk is actually the one that's the superhero, and I really liked the MCU version where you see the arc of the Hulk as becoming this mindless beast to becoming someone that cares. And
Right.
I wish, the only thing I didn't like about the MCU in the latter part with Hulk was that we didn't see more in Infinity War of the Hulk. So I didn't like that they had the Hulk not coming out of Bruce Banner. I know why they did that, because there was a whole lot of Hulk in Thor 3.
Sure.
So they wanted to give Bruce Banner some time. So I understand that, but you lost a lot of the drama with Bruce Banner.
In other words, Marvel, make a Hulk movie
Yeah.
in that 5-year period so that we can appreciate that story.
Right.
Line too.
And that was the other problem, is I didn't have enough development of the character between the two Avengers movies.
Right.
He just suddenly became the smart Hulk, and we're supposed to accept it as resolve. So it doesn't really pay off what we wanted, which was to see him overcome it. Because one of the joys of Marvel Comics is seeing the character overcome the problem, not just seeing them before and then after.
Danziger, if you could clarify your last comment there regarding Banner being the nice guy and that sort of thing, it would be helpful for us to respond, because I'm not sure what you're going for there in the last sentence.
I think with Banner, what I liked about Mark Ruffalo's version is he had this nervous energy.
Yes,
like
absolutely.
You can kind of see like he's kind of afraid of himself and afraid of what might happen if he momentarily lapses his judgment.
Some of the best scenes in the first Avengers movie are Tony Stark cattle prodding him. I want to see the other guy.
It's so good.
I want to see the other guy. You know what I mean? Because, and then he's like, no, you really don't. And then we see why we wouldn't, because he just, starts tearing the place apart.
It's pretty cool. But I think one of the problems is if we just left those characters that way, we wouldn't really know what was right. I think even Marvel has a character that fits the forms from like DC, which is Captain America.
Yes.
Now you mentioned Silver Surfer.
Yes, I think Silver Surfer is a good example of that.
Adam Warlock,
Yes, Phoenix has potential.
Charles Xavier.
I don't like him only because of the way they're writing him these days.
Well, but
Like,
early,
I mean, for the last 15 years,
Yeah.
they've been writing him in kind of this really like, is he a good guy or not? And
which is probably good storytelling, but before that,
yes,
he
I
was
mean,
generally the moral compass of the group.
absolutely,
the father
yes.
figure.
Right.
And I think that's good because even Marvel has realized that you have to have somebody that is kind of representative of the form to keep the rest of the group centered. Because what happens when Iron Man and Captain America clash, it's obvious who's on the wrong side. It's obviously Iron Man, right?
Right.
But
Cyclops is good, but he only kind of falls in line with Xavier until X-Men versus Avengers, where they up in that relationship. So I agree, Danzier, that Cyclops ordinarily would represent that, but
Cyclops used to.
Yes,
They kind of ruined the character now, but
they've screwed around with him. It's hard,
which is really sad because I'm a big Cyclops fan.
Yeah.
He was my first favorite character or superhero, other than Robin.
Right.
But
Danzier, I asked you, and you may have been off at the moment, but if you could clarify your last comment about the Hulk. There's a spelling error at the end, so it's kind of hard for me to make out what you were trying to say.
Bad people. Okay. Well, he does that. But Marvel has the form as the center of the group, which is Captain America. And Captain America is the morality of the team. Right. And so it kind of shows like we really need morality, like a common view and agreement of morality in order to hold the team together.
And by that, you mean what is right and acceptable,
right,
for heroes to do.
So Justice League, you have Superman. He's the moral center.
Right.
And in a lesser sense, Wonder Woman.
Absolutely.
And when they're not around, Batman.
Right.
Batman needs Superman. but
you have them all represented well, I think, in Martian Manhunter. So that's why he's been a part of every new league that's been created.
Yeah.
So he's the best. I'm just saying.
But yeah, and I think that's kind of why I'm afraid of the MCU next phase, because without Captain America holding the team together in that moral function, you've got to fill that gap. And I don't think that Falcon's ready for that position yet. I think that there's ways to get him there. But honestly, I think Black Panther could easily take that position up.
Yes, no, I think that
circumstances.
I think that could.
But they actually have to let him do something.
Right. Yeah.
Which they haven't done since Civil War. It's the only movie that he's really done anything. Even his own movie, he didn't do anything. Don't hate me. Civil War was awesome, and Black Panther was one of the best parts of that movie.
Yeah. No, he was the best part of that movie.
And so
I felt let down by Zemo, but Black Panther's I'm clawing my way into this.
I love Black Panther so much in Civil War that just overshadows his own movie, because it was just so much better, I thought. And anyways, but yeah, so I think that's one of the main reasons that people are drawn to Marvel is you've got kind of this idea that we can relate to that's more tangible than the ideals, the forms. Obviously, you still have the ideals in them, and when they represent or when they become heroes and they shine those ideals, it's really easy to see and really encouraging and challenging in a way to motivate us. But and obviously, you have those few characters that hold the universe together in morality and form.
And that I think is why in the Infinity War movie, two scenes stand out to me. When Scarlet Witch and Vision are getting the snot kicked out of them by Thanos's, was it the Black Order?
Sure.
I forget the name. It's Proxima Midnight was the girl, and Obsidian. I don't know. I don't know their names. They didn't really spend a whole lot of time with anybody other than Maul, who I love. But just that scene where they're about to be put down and Captain America shows up. The scene is dark, but the moment he steps out of the shadows, you feel like this light has been cast, right? And then the other scene is, and I know you know what I'm about to talk about, where all hope seems to be lost, and then the lightning hits, right? Like Thor shows up,
Oh,
and you're just like,
that's the best part of that
this
movie.
is what we've been waiting for. Like, there's this anticipation within us that desires to see the hero come back from the brink of defeat, right? And smash the bad guys, because we so desperately need someone to come in and just rescue us from whatever, right? Like whether it's evil alien hordes about to devour us, or we're getting ganged up on because, you know.
I think you can see this in every culture. Like some cultures, they try to outweigh the good and the bad. Like we all sense like we all have human nature. We all do bad things. And so every culture has come up with a way to solve the problem of the bad things that we do. And so when we see bad things in our culture, things in the world that are unjust, people being, killed unjustly, or unjust courts, or we see, things that aren't right happening, and we have no power to fix them. It's helpful to see in fiction that the unjust getting their justice.
Yeah.
And so when Thanos finally is defeated in the end, spoiler alert, it feels great. It feels so good to see them finally get their comeuppance.
Yeah, when he snaps his finger and then he's like, nothing happened. So Danziger, I see what you're saying, but I'm talking about the first half of the movie, not Endgame, but the Infinity War part that ends with half the people getting dusted. But yeah, we're talking about Endgame now, and so I just love when Thanos snaps his fingers and he's like, "I'm inevitable." And then he's like, and then Iron Man's like, "I am Iron Man."
It's so good. What's it called? I watched a video today talking about it's by the Closer Look or something like that. They reviewed the last battle of Endgame and talked about how it was a missed opportunity, how they could have been even better. It's really good. They compare it to the great movie battles scenes, like Helm's Deep is the big one that they rally it to, and they're like, this is why it's not as good as Helm's Deep. And it's a great video. Go watch it. The Closer Look, I think, is the channel. It's like 30 minutes long, but it's really well worth it. And he's got some good points.
And if you stick with our videos, you'll be all right with 30 minutes. We're well past that at this point.
We talked too long.
Because we've only talked about one point at this point.
Right. But it's interesting because you mentioned about Thor coming in, and they tried in the second one with Captain Marvel. But the problem is nobody really cares about Captain Marvel. And so when she comes...
I'm sorry to any of you.
When she comes in, it's just like, okay, whatever. I don't care. But when Captain America picks up Thor's hammer...
Right.
Boy, that's the best part of that movie right there. Because you're like, thank you. That
it was like, it felt justified. Like
we were all excited because now we see Captain America. Like everybody's defeated, but there's hope, and we just didn't get that from Captain Marvel. But we got it from Thor. We got it from Captain America. I think that the MCU is going to have a problem now that the former roster is basically being cycled off of having the characters that we cared about. And that's another topic for another day.
That's true, because we started down that rabbit trail on our way to make this
I don't want to
video.
go too far, but other reasons.
Well, hold on. I just
Okay, go
wanted
ahead.
to touch on, help me out here. Captain Marvel, she came in and blew up the ship, or like I don't even remember when she shows up to fight. Like that is.
Well, all of a sudden, the turrets that Thanos had turned to stop Scarlet Witch from stopping him turn up into the sky because no one knows how to defeat it, apparently. And then she just flies through it and destroys it.
Right, but didn't she do that in her own movie? So by that point, it was like, oh,
maybe
that's just what Captain Marvel does. She slams through ships, and that's all she wrote.
I don't remember. Probably. Yeah. But I was like, come on. I feel like Thanos' ship is going to be able to stop that.
You'd think,
but
it was an old ship, right? It was 5 years old from the point of the movie. Right?
I don't know. Anyways,
or I guess 10 years. I don't know. It's time travel. My head hurts.
Other things we like about Marvel.
So yeah, you have big name characters. Obviously, we've talked about Spider-Man, Captain America, the Fantastic Four. We like them, and then we like that they have a history. And you pointed out, Dan Zier, how they had like all these rich jobs and stuff, but guys like Tony Stark had to be rich. How else could he afford to make his snazzy suits?
Well, and Spider-Man's not rich.
Spider-Man is poor. He's consistently poor.
He used to be.
He's still consistently poor in my head canon.
Yeah. Miles Morales. Oh, yeah, you're good. Miles Morales is still
poor. Yeah.
I think the new Defenders are poor.
Yeah, they all live in Hell's Kitchen. That's like the worst part of New York.
So they're not
City.
They're not all rich.
Right, and neither are they in.
Of course, most of those were created later.
Well, okay, but Superman he was a poor farm boy who went and if you read Marv Wolfman's excellent Man and Superman story, he was living in the worst part of Metropolis, Suicide Slum, which is the DC equivalent to Hell's Kitchen. Anyway, I
think that's another thing that Marvel has going for them is they use real places, and so they can relate to like current events, like when the Twin Towers were.
Yes.
9/11 happened. You know.
Can you believe that's been 18
They made
years?
an homage to that in the comics with Spider-Man and other heroes going to help, and just another way that's more relatable because we can never go to Metropolis. We can never go. You can't go to the Batcave though, because that's in North Carolina.
That's true. I have pictures from when I stopped at the sign in the middle of the night one time as a buddy of mine were traveling to the mountains. Dan Zier, you mentioned people believing that they too could become a rich philanthropist. I wanted to be rich one day when I was in high school so that I could take care of my mom. But I think statistically, poor people tend to give toward charitable causes more than rich people. Now, they may not give more money, but proportionately, they tend to give more of their money, if that makes sense. And so that's a whole other conversation. But I think that like Batman had to be rich so he could afford his gadgets.
Although I don't know, with the age of technology, people are becoming rich on Instagram, on YouTube
now. But we're talking about when these characters were created.
Well, he's talking about back then. People would believe it. People believe it now too.
Well, that's true.
I mean, just like that, people are becoming stars by making crazy videos. Channels. Yeah, because we're going to be super rich.
We don't do this for the money. We don't do this for the fame. We do this because
we love talking about it.
We love comic books.
We want to share it with you guys.
But I mean, the history of these characters. Captain America is this World War II veteran. I don't know that I've ever met a World War II veteran in person. So, and the longer it goes, or the further removed we get from that, the less likely that's going to be true. But Captain America is a tangible way for us to never forget the horrors of World War II.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, like that's one of the reasons I like the character so much. Like I dug him when nobody else liked him. So for those of you out there who jumped on the bandwagon when Captain America and Avengers rolled around, welcome. For those of you who were rolling with Captain America, even when he sucked, from certain perspectives, like he wore like armor at one point because the super soldier serum was failing in his body, right? And those comics weren't blockbuster, well remembered, but I still thought they were good. I still enjoyed them. I had no idea what was going on, but I enjoyed it. Anyways, we talked about human characters with flaws. I like also that they have big guys. The Thing, the Hulk, Thor, those guys are bigger than life, right? They look like they could be a football team even bigger. You know what I mean? Like in DC, the biggest heavy hitters sort of look normal size, but
Or bad guys.
or they're bad guys, right?
Like
So that discourages me.
Grundy, Dark Side,
Blockbuster, Doomsday, yeah,
Clayface.
right. All those super strong characters who don't necessarily look
Bane.
super strong. Yes, or they're bad guys.
Or how Bane's supposed to be.
That's right. I can't believe you went with the way you did Dark Knight Rises. You made me sad. Because I love big bruisers. I want them to look like tanks. I always wondered why Superman wasn't drawn bigger.
Well,
And then I saw him drawing bigger, and I'm like,
and there's big guys out there that are like pretty strong, that are like physically huge.
oh, in real life,
yeah. I mean, it's not that.
I mean, we have
unreal.
ridiculously, like, you watch the World's Strongest Man contest, and you're like, good gosh, his arm is as big as my head. That scares me. I like the diversity of powers. Back in the day, the Legion of Superheroes, to be a member, you had to have a power nobody else had. I thought that was cool. But in the Justice League, you've got Superman, Wonder Woman, Martian Manhunter, and Captain Marvel, aka Shazam, because I don't want confusion to arise. And all of them are super strong. All of them are super fast. Some of them have vision powers, some of them don't. Some of them have gods backing them, some of them don't. But in Marvel, you look at the X-Men and you have a nice range of diversity. You have ice powers, storm powers, you have eye beams, you have hand blast, you have telepathic, telekinetic, you have flight, speed, healing, claws, teleporting, turn metal,
Everything.
Yeah, you got this nice plethora. I'm going to use that word. Nice plethora of options as far as who you want to be and what kind of power you'd like to have. I also like different levels. You have the cosmic level.
I see what you're saying, Dan Zero. I agree. Go on.
Anyway, I like the street level heroes, and then you kind of have some of everything in between. Like, it was nicely divided up, and then when they crossed over, it meant something. So like when Spider-Man shows up with the X-Men, you're like, ooh, I'm interested. It's not like, oh, this is Tuesday, right? But it's actually Monday. Feels like a Tuesday. Tuesdayest Monday I've ever seen.
They have a lot of teams. They have
They
a lot of
do.
team ups. Now, I'm going to argue, because I'm a DC fan, that DC's teams are better, but Marvel has so many teams going. And I feel like
there's only a good handful of Marvel teams, though.
I feel like with DC, everything's kind of collected in the Justice League, and that's kind of central.
Yeah, and then you have
whereas with but they're all like under the Justice League.
That's true.
Whereas with Marvel, like, you got the Fantastic Four way over here, you got the Avengers over here, the X-Men over there.
We still haven't seen
and then all the other teams going around that are connected in a way, but very loosely connected all over there. Like, they cross over from time to time, but they're not that big. I mean, usually what happens in DC is they just all join the Justice League.
That's right. I hear what you're saying.
The extended Justice League, which is cool, and I like that about DC. It might be in a later video.
Could be,
but
strong possibility.
But I also like the fact that you don't have to be an Avenger. You could go be a Fantastic Four, or you could go be an X-Men.
Yeah, I mean,
or you start your own team.
All it requires to be an X-Men is to be a mutant.
Do your own thing.
So if you're born with a mutant power,
good guy.
Right, but you could try out for the X-Men.
Okay. Yeah.
And then turn villain, because that's usually what happens.
Doom Patrol.
Yeah,
That's
well,
DC. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah. The last thing that I wanted to say, as far as it, they have a way of elevating minor characters. So you read a Marvel team up book, you've got Spider-Man as the lead, and then you'll have a secondary character like Moon Knight, right? In a lot of ways, he's Marvel's Batman, but he's crazy. Or you have who's some lower tier guys, Quasar. Like he's super powerful, but if you've never read his story, you might read him teaming up with Spider-Man, right? And of course, then you get Spider-Man in some wacky cosmic adventure, and you're like, okay, comics are crazy, and I like that. Or you read the X-Men, and you get a spotlight issue on who's a random X-Men that most folks aren't as familiar with. Beast. We'll go with Beast.
I like Beast.
I love Beast. He's one of my favorites. And he hangs out with Iceman, right? Because in the comics, for the longest time, they were best friends. So not only do you discover this issue that focuses on them, but you find out more about their friendship, you find out more about their personalities, and that sort of thing. And so Marvel does that really well. The special, I don't want to call them special issues, but they're basically like after school special issues, right? Where so like in the 90s when Colossus's sister died from the legacy virus, that's a 25-year-old spoiler, I think. You read it and you don't, if you don't know who Jubilee is, or you don't know who Kitty Pryde is, you don't know who Colossus is, that one issue, it's Uncanny X-Men 303. For those of you who are interested, you can find it in the dollar bin, but it's totally, the cover itself brags about it being worth reading, and I'm here to tell you it's worth reading. It's one of those death issues that you know, depending on your sensitivity, may or may not be rocked by, but I was rocked by it. Like you feel the weight of this little kid dying from this disease that she had no desire to catch. She did nothing to get it, nothing to quote unquote deserve to die that way. And you really feel the turmoil of all the characters. Like you feel like, I'm not Colossus, but I know, what it's like for him to lose his sister. Like I've lost my mom to cancer. Now I know she didn't smoke with the purpose of getting cancer. She had lung cancer, but I mean, I still miss her, and it's been, oh gosh, let's see, 15 years this November since she died, and it's hard to talk about at times. But like, I feel like when Aunt May died, and in my head canon, she's still dead because J.M. DeMatteis wrote one of the best death scenes in all of comics history in Amazing Spider-Man 400.
Yeah.
That's one I'm gonna make you read before you like put your comics aside or whatever, because I mean, it rocked me. Like as I'm reading it, and then having read it after my mom died, like just the touching scene that you wrote. You really can relate to these characters. So anyway,
maybe one last thing I'd say. One of the great things about Marvel is Stan Lee and Jack Kirby.
Yes.
I don't think, and this might be because of my ignorance, that DC really has a counterpart to Stan Lee and Jack Kirby and how influential they were to the thing or to the comics, especially in a way that affected the entire culture. Because everybody pretty much knows who Stan Lee is now. And a good portion of people know who Jack Kirby is. And there's some really great writers over at DC, and I like, I have some of my favorites. But
I named one of them earlier.
But and obviously, Kirby wrote for DC as well. I don't know if does Stan Lee write?
He did a brief little thing called Just Imagine. Stan Lee creates Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman. He did a few issues. I can't 10 or so.
But I think those two really shaped, and there were a few others.
His Wonder Woman was
around
from
them.
South America. and the Amazon River as opposed to.
There are a few others that created with those two, so it wasn't just them, but they really shaped Marvel as it is today. And I really love that they had Stan Lee in a lot of the movies, and or all of them. And
yeah, Kirby died over 25
and
about 25 years ago. So.
And so he, has shaped a lot of young writers today, and a lot, even DC writers.
Well, and there's so much overlap now, whereas before it was Stan and a bunch of, artists, and then you had the DC guys, right?
So I just think that's really cool. That he's got his name all over Marvel.
Yeah,
and that's just an awesome thing. And so, yeah, I think having that personality really just helps drive the brand of Marvel, and probably always will, or at least for a long time. But those are the reasons that we think that people love Marvel. Maybe next week we'll be talking about DC and why people like DC. If you're new here,
you already know why, or you won't know why we love DC. But if you're not new here, you know why we love DC.
We've got a video that we did a long time ago about one's called Why Marvel Comics, or Why DC Comics is Better Than Marvel, and then we did one where it was Why the MCU is Better Than the DCEU. Go check those out. Those are, I think they're pretty good. You can wait till next week. We will be talking about DC and why people love DC Comics. And so hopefully you enjoyed this. We're trying to do things a little bit different than normal as far as topics go. Hope you enjoy it.
Hopefully we didn't get too deep philosophically, because we're probably going to go deeper next week.
There you go. But we really enjoy talking about not just the comics themselves, but like the deeper ideas and thoughts behind them, and we wanted to share some of that too.
We think they're purposeful.
Keep an eye out for some future things. We got haven't started filming yet, but we've got some Yoda videos that we've already figured out plots for, and got some a couple guys that I'm talking to guest star on the channel. And
Same thing, Dan's here. We'll see you next time.
Not sure what exactly time we're going to be doing Mondays, so we'll see. It could be around the same time, might be back to our normal super late.
Go to Facebook and like our page there, and then we'll try to put up a link when we're going to go live.
Yeah.
That way, an announcement of some kind. That way you guys can hop on and be here with us. And when we call you family, we mean it. We're inviting you to come around the same thing that we love, comic books, and we have shared language, right?
Yeah. So if you're new here, go ahead and subscribe. Join the family. We love just hanging out and talking. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you like about Marvel Comics, or what you don't like about Marvel Comics. And we have both sides. There are things we don't like about Marvel.
That's right.
But there's a lot of good too.
Yeah.
So let us know what you think, and we'll catch you next time. Peace.